Welcome to our podcast. This is another recorded episode of Stay Classy San Diego, with video production and studio provided by MaxLux Media, sponsored by Dorada Nutrition, with your host being myself, Steve Wire, a freelance reporter. This podcast is dedicated to fostering quality dialogue surrounding all things local policy related in North County, San Diego. Join us weekly as we interview political leaders, analysts, professionals, and community members on issues ranging from homelessness to housing density to elections. So today we bring to the studio Marta Giri. Marta is the founder of the host of the Locally Well podcast, and we're really excited to have you on the show today. Thanks so much for coming on. Marta is actually really passionate about reading, traveling, and exploring. She studied in Sydney, Australia. Is that correct?
Yep.
Where she received her undergraduate degree in journalism. So she's a fellow journalist. She's also co-hosted an alternative health radio show. She spent 2 decades working in marketing, but has since returned to journalism. She is now the editor-in-chief and host of her podcast, Locally Well in San Diego, a San Diego-based podcast focusing on wellness news, trends, and events in San Diego. Marta hosts a number of local wellness business owners and practitioners focusing on food, health, movement, well-being, and spirituality on her podcast. And she recently did a series on women's health and wellness, is that correct, for Women's History Month?
Yes.
In March. And in this series, she's been doing topics such as balance in life, balancing hormones, birth control, owning your health journey, and more. We're really excited to have you on the show. I wanted to get right into some questions for you. First of all, can you talk a little bit about just let people, I just gave some rough facts about you, but a little more details about just what sort of started your own health and wellness journey and what sort of inspired your journalism to focus on this particular area of life?
Yeah, I've always been interested in alternative health since I can remember. I was one of the first kind of yoga practitioners before yoga was a thing. I got a book from the library and was curious about different cultures and exploring different paths of wellness. I've always been a seeker, so that's where my journey has come from. I've always been interested in pursuing different cultures. That led me to Sydney, Australia, and a degree in journalism, where I co-hosted, as you mentioned, an alternative health radio show. I would run around Sydney interviewing wellness practitioners when we had little MP3 players before there was any iPhones or any kind of recording equipment. And it was just a great way to get to know the community that I was living in, see the culture, but also really open my eyes to what we could do with wellness and how we can improve ourselves. So that's really where it all started for me.
Sure. Do you feel like your experience in Australia has sort of catapulted you into pursuing this path, or is it something that you've been sort of looking for even before that?
Yeah, I definitely was looking for it before that. Like I mentioned, I've always been a spiritual seeker. But yeah, when I came back from Australia, I started, climbing the corporate ladder. Starting a career in marketing, and started doing that, started a family, and it was in COVID. Right before COVID started, I was at the top of the corporate ladder. I even had a meeting with the CEO who had come into town to meet with me specifically to tell me that I was a rising star and dare I go anywhere. Cut to 6 weeks later, COVID happened, the lockdown happened, and the business I was working with shut down entirely. I was out of a job, and I didn't know what to do next. Sure. So I was like, well, what am I always passionate about? And health and wellness is always something that I've been interested in. And I also wanted to find people like me who are interested in what I'm interested in. And so that's how Locally Well San Diego was born. I started locallywell.com, writing about articles and showcasing all of the local wellness events that were happening in the community. And also spotlighting local businesses and light workers that are uplifting everybody in our community, especially during COVID. We all needed, some bright lights during that time and to help us heal as we've come out of that. So that's what I've built over the last few years, is creating that community where people can go to find local resources to help elevate their mind, body, and spirit.
Sure. So for those who've never listened to an episode of the Locally Well podcast, if someone wants to tune in, what should they expect here? What are some of the themes and patterns and subjects that you cover, and why those particular focuses?
Yeah, this month we're talking about zero waste living. The sustainable community in San Diego is really strong. Obviously, we're so closely connected to nature. It's around us every day with the ocean nearby, all the beautiful hiking trails and locations we have here. And so naturally, there's a natural focus on sustainability that's happening, of course, all around the world too.
Sure.
So there's a huge movement on zero waste living, and what that is just reducing your waste step by step. It could be Bringing glass jars to the grocery store. We have a new zero waste grocery store up in Encinitas, as well as one in North Park. That's one focus. I also interviewed the sisters. They're San Diego's first zero waste salon located in La Mesa.
La Mesa. Okay.
And they might actually be the first zero waste salon in the country. And they've been operating for over 12 years. So they know how to run a zero waste business. So there's so much things that are happening in our community that impact that we can tap into to elevate our daily lives and our, and our spirit.
Sure. So when you talk about health and wellness, I mean, there's so much that goes into that. I mean, what in your opinion, like, composes your vision of this topic? Like, there's obviously fitness, there's nutrition, there's mindfulness. What else, or what kind of things really go into this vision of health and wellness that you're trying to sort of build on the podcast?
Yeah, wellness is kind of becoming an umbrella term, right? Anything can be considered wellness, sure. These days. So we focus a lot on movement, different types of movement, trends that are happening in the San Diego wellness community. So I wrote an article about infrared fitness. That's really popular. A lot of, there's like hot bar studios, as well as there's always been hot yoga, but infrared takes it to the next level. So that's a trend that's happening. Other things that we focus on are well-being, meditation, mindfulness, spirituality, intuition, as well as plant-based foods. That's another movement, of course, that's sweeping, the globe. It has an environmental impact, but also helps your health. So we often focus a lot about health-based and farm-to-table restaurants here in the community, as well as resources for everybody. So it runs the gamut from what will elevate your mind, body, and spirit, right?
Sure, yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, from living in San Diego for roughly a few years now, I've become sort of aware of like this place as sort of this central hub of fitness, a central hub of health and wellness, and just, with the weather and the way that it is, and the kind of people that tend to gravitate towards this place, it seems like such a magnet for exactly what you're talking about. Do you get that sense, and sort of what's unique about living here? Can you talk about how the area that we live in, the community that we live in, sort of shapes what you do?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's why I started locallywell.com too, is not only did I want to find like-minded people who are interested in what I was interested in, but also I saw that no one was showcasing the amazing health and wellness companies that were coming out of San Diego as a news source. So I started the website and started the podcast to showcase all of those folks. We have Viore, we have blenders, we have Om Mushrooms, we have Organifi. We have even Good Anya here in Encinitas. They produce their own hydrate collagen powder. Bubs Natural, same thing, collagen powder. There's so many startups that are all geared about health and wellness, from fitness to consumer good products to athleisure wear with Viore. I mean, everything is happening here. It really is the mecca, and we're also trendsetters for what the entire nation is up to too. So San Diego is unlike any other place in the country, and that I think a lot of the health and wellness trends are born here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It seems like what happened, it seems like California, so I've lived in several different parts of the country. It seems like California as a whole is sort of this fitness, wellness trendsetter for the rest of the country.
Yeah.
And it seems like San Diego is sort of the capital of that.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. But I want to take this on a more personal note. Now, for people who maybe don't know where to start, they're just really lost and confused and all of this, like for someone who's looking to start their own personal health and wellness journey, like what are some of the first steps that someone can take? If someone's like, I want to be fit, or I want to achieve mindfulness, or I have these specific goals in mind for myself, but I just really don't know where to start. There's so many people out there. There's so much information out there, so much of a wealth of information out there on the internet. What are some recommendations for those first steps that you have?
Yeah, I think first steps could be to tap into what area of wellness you feeling you're needing the most support. I think we find true balance and wellness when we can balance all areas of our life, right? So maybe you're working a little too hard right now, and maybe you're needing a little more balance. Maybe you're not moving your body enough. So thinking about what that looks like for you, or maybe even reflecting on when you have been the most say, balanced in your life in the past? What activities were you doing? Maybe it was even when you were only 8 years old.
Sure.
Maybe you loved dancing. Maybe you loved playing basketball. Why not incorporate more of those activities that brought you joy into your everyday life now? There are also many people in our community that can help you on your journey. Think of them not necessarily as, there's a lot of coaches that can help you, support you, but really you're in the driver's seat of your own wellness journey. So they can help guide you though and give you tips based on their training, years of training that they've done, whether as a doctor, as a health coach, or a physical therapist. I would seek out those resources. We, on locallywell.com, just launched a new San Diego Wellness Business Directory of all the local resources that you can tap into. So if you're looking for a health coach, if you're looking for a certain service provider, you can scan our directory and find one that matches up with what you're looking for.
Sure, no, that's great. Now, another follow-up question I have on that is: it seems like I said earlier, there's a dearth of information out there, obviously on fitness, on wellness, especially in San Diego. But not all this information is good information.
Yeah.
And it can be difficult to sort that out. Do you have any tips or recommendations for who to listen to, what information to listen to, what information to avoid, like sort of how to disseminate that and distill that process?
100%. I think a lot of folks are kind of using YouTube, WebMD,
Sure.
to diagnose their health issues. Let's not forget about the training that our medical doctors have gone through, years and years of training to become who they, to have their certifications. I would be looking for health coaches that are board certified,
Sure.
That do have those professional certifications. If you're not going to say a naturopath or a MD. Naturopaths also have to go through rigorous training. I think it's like 5 to 7 years, just like an MD too. Okay. So even though they are a holistic alternative health practitioner, they have the same rigorous training that, say, not the same, but similar path that an MD would have. So I would always be looking at your sources. What's their background? What are they saying? If you're wanting to partner with someone, maybe you could see if they have some referrals of other people that they've worked with before. But yeah, doing your own research and asking for those credentials is a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. It just seems like there's so much bogus information out there. I mean, on the internet, I'm like inundated with 100 different ads from all these supplement companies, wellness companies, and it just and everybody seems like they have advice to offer now, but it's just like how do you distill that? I think is always a challenge. But what I wanted to ask you about is I know the podcast that you run is also connected to various events that you put on for the San Diego community. Can you talk about some of these events, and some of the health and wellness benefits that they offer, especially for our people who are listening to the show?
Yeah, so there's so much going on. Like I said in the beginning, that's why I started locallywell.com, is because I wanted to find local people and like-minded people who were interested in the same things I was interested in. There's a lot of focus on, San Diego Beer Fest and taco festivals, which is great, but who is interested in connecting on a conscious level or elevating their mind, body, and spirit? So yeah, there's lots of events, and that's kind of what we're known for on our social channels, is that we share out what's happening in the community. Every Thursday, I post a roundup of what's happening in the next weekend, that are events that are happening within the community, and sharing those out through our stories as well. So we often are a platform for others that are hosting wellness events, and only in the last couple of months have we started hosting our own events. So we have a health and wellness networking event coming up. That's something that we like to do, community-focused events for like-minded folks, as well as I host some conscious entrepreneur workshops and events for people who are in this line of work in the community.
Mm-hmm. And what I wanted to ask you about is for people who maybe haven't participated in those kind of events before, sort of why is this like a good opportunity to jump in at this particular time, and how does that segue into one's own health and wellness journey?
Yeah, I think it's just I think after COVID, we were all tired of being trapped in our houses, and there really is a trend towards getting off of Zoom. There were a lot of virtual events. A lot of these wellness folks moved online because they had to. They had to put their studios online. They had to put coaching online, and I think everyone is just like have a backlash. No one wants to be on Zoom anymore.
No.
I certainly don't. I'm
No.
fatigued with Zoom. And so there's so many more conscious communities that are popping up. There's tons of circles, like community circles, where there'll be, usually some kind of intention setting, and then there'll be some movement, breath work. There's a lot of breath work and cold plunge communities. That's really popular with the fitness community, where you'll do kind of the Wim Hof breathing method, if you're not familiar with that. It's a method that actually started with, I believe, Tibetan monks. It's something called tumo breathing, where you practice certain breathing, and then it prepares your body for extreme situations of stress. So you can then go into a cold plunge bath that's at 45 degrees for 5 minutes and be okay. So that's really popular. There's even a studio in Carlsbad that opened to provide that kind of fitness experience for folks.
What's it called?
It's called Breathe Degrees.
Breathe Degrees.
Yeah, and I tried it, and that's what I write about a lot. I love to try all the new modalities that are in the community too, and write like kind of I tried it posts, and it was intense. It was an experience, yeah. So there's communities like that, and then there's also like niche communities. So there are a lot of women's circles, but also men's circles too. Wellness has sometimes been seen as a women's space. I think because of maybe more of the intuitive nature and the sharing nature, or, kind of nurturing nature that comes with wellness and care. Mm-hmm. But more men, I'm seeing lots and lots of more opportunities for men to be entering this space. And if that's something you're interested in, you could start maybe with a men's circle to feel more accepted, and trying yoga and trying breath work and trying cold plunges. And then maybe you start to explore yoga classes or other studios. I mean, all these spaces, of course, are welcome to any gender, male, female, non-binary. But if you want to feel more supported and, gently dip your toe into wellness, those are some great places to start.
Yeah, I mean, it seems, touching on that point, as though you said that since we've seen as more of a women's space, I wonder if that's because the fitness journey, like for men and women, like men tend to take, seems like more individualistic approach to their own fitness journey.
Yeah.
On the whole, where it seems as though with women it's more like communally, like classes and those kinds of things. And I just wonder if there's like maybe there's like a space to like push it in the other direction and say, there's more inclusivity, there's more rooms for you. If you're a man, you can be in these circles, you can like take part in these kinds of events. So
yeah, absolutely. And I actually just wrote an article and published it today about a new conscious community for singles that just launched in San Diego too. So it's focused on impact-driven events. So they're wanting to have service events and like-minded opportunities for like-minded individuals to meet and connect in this way, not necessarily through wellness, but through conscious connection and service events here in San Diego. So
yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Hey there, San Diego. If you're on the hunt for a way to enhance your health, I have a great recommendation for you. Dorado Nutrition is a company that's all about helping people live their best lives through top-notch American-made supplements. Their expert team has crafted products to support a variety of health needs, from weight management to muscle building and more. And with ingredients like Vidosia agrestis and Tongkat Ali, praised by a well-known neurobiologist seen on the Joe Rogan podcast, these supplements could be just what you need to reach your health goals. And for a limited time, you can get 25% off your purchase by using promo code SD2023 at checkout. So if you're looking for a way to improve your health, Dorado Nutrition might just be the solution you need. I wanted to touch on another thing you said, which is we've kind of danced around it, but this topic of the pandemic, which, we're sort of, I know everybody feels differently, but we're sort of in what a lot of people say is sort of a post-COVID era now. Mm-hmm. And but looking back on the pandemic, I mean, it was obviously a very difficult time for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. But I want to talk specifically about the effects that COVID had on the fitness wellness community. As you said, a lot of things were pushed to Zoom, whether that's classes or events or spaces that were pushed to virtual. People couldn't go to the gym. All sorts of things. That's certainly something that I, personally experienced. So, what do you think were some of the long-term effects coming out of COVID that the pandemic had on sort of our approach, specifically in San Diego, to the local wellness and fitness like space? Like how has that changed post COVID?
Yeah, as we mentioned, obviously people went online, went on to Zoom. I know several studios had to close. That even after trying to get onto Zoom, it just couldn't make it. A lot of businesses needed to shut down. And I think like even in the restaurant space, it was like who could get that parking lot outside the restaurant, right?
Yeah.
If they could had a parking lot that they could convert into dining space, they were set.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like in Little Italy, there was, I think the San Diego Magazine talked about this. Like it was like the restaurants that were on like the hills. They couldn't make it as well because they didn't have a flat space for putting out tables for servers, as well as some of the main ones like on India Street, right?
Yeah.
So it was those that could adapt quickly and figure out the Zoom situation were the ones that could, be successful and adapt nimbly. Some of the studios that were more of the traditional yoga style, come in, take a class, they just, it didn't do as well. And so I think, it disrupted everybody's industries. But also the things that came out of that too is a different type of wellness that people were seeking after. We talked a little bit about that, people wanting to be more in person, but also the types of classes they wanted. So before it was all like yoga is fitness, sculpt, like we're gonna add in weights and vinyasa, super fast flows. But people after COVID really wanted to just chill out. Yeah. They wanted to, what's really popular in the wellness industry right now is they'll use terms like regulating your nervous system.
What does that even mean?
What does that mean, right? Is so you've heard about the flight or fight response, right? That we have when we have trauma.
Yeah.
And there's this book, I can't remember the author's last name, but it's very popular. It's called The Body Keeps Score. And it's the idea that the trauma and emotions that you've had the emotions you've carried with you through after traumatic experiences get stored within your body. Yeah. You get trapped in there. And so there's new wellness methods. The terms that people in the wellness space are using are things like somatic embodiment, somatic movement therapy. Popular yoga styles are yin yoga and yoga nidra. With those, if you're familiar with any yoga pose, it's like laying in child's pose or any kind of pose, or pigeon, for instance, but you lay there for 5 minutes in the pose.
It's a long time.
And in one of those classes, restorative yoga is another phrase for this type of style of yoga, and you only do like 5 poses in the whole class.
But
that's it.
For a long time.
But you do it for a really long time, and the idea is that you're releasing all of those pent up stresses that are trapped within your body. Sure. And so it's just another way to get that out. So people are really wanting to slow down. That's why the breath work is really popular. Hypnosis is another thing that is being incorporated into a lot of different things. Not like mind control hypnosis, but reprogramming your thoughts to undo some of those fears and past anxieties to be more about positivity. So that's where hypnosis can access your subconscious mind. So there's wellness centers. There's a new wellness center in Kensington, actually, that has hypnotic sessions like this, where they'll do a kind of a group thing to help you rework some of those past issues.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. It's a fun space if you're just wanting to try something new. And that's the thing, too, is like some folks have been doing things like talk therapy for like 15, 20 years. And they're like, well, I can only share my story so many times. What else is out there?
Sure.
So a lot of people in the wellness community are just seeking other ways and trying new things because like some of the old patterns and old modalities don't work anymore. And that, of course, is a segue to the most popular topic right now, which is psychedelics and plant medicine. Everyone and their mom is interested in ayahuasca, psilocybin, microdosing, ketamine-assisted therapy is also really popular. So all of those are the most popular articles on our website by far. Is our guide to like plant medicine resources in San Diego. Is what everyone is seeking, some additional support to help process kind of what we went through COVID and before that.
Okay, so I mean, what do you think is the obsession that people are having with psychedelics and that sort of thing? I mean, do you think it is the sort of the response to the post-COVID trauma, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, kind of like what I was saying, the vein of that people have tried different things for a long time, maybe talk therapy or meditation, and they're just wanting, and some of it is curiosity. Like, I wonder what it would be like to try these experiences. And then we have people like Aaron Rodgers and Prince Harry talking about their ayahuasca and psilocybin experiences. I mean, it's getting mainstream, and there's a bill, I believe, in the California Senate now to decriminalize both of those substances. And it's kind of a race of who can get there first. The reason is as pharma wants to
be able to take advantage of those
exactly,
profits.
Exactly. But a lot of the local wellness community here and those that administer those psychedelics through ceremonies, they're called, they want to maintain it as a plant medicine because that's what it is, similar to marijuana, right? So it's really interesting space to see what will happen. I also talked with therapists. They think MDMA, just like ketamine, is legal if prescribed by a psychiatrist right now, I believe. Don't correct me. Look that up and seek out your medical professional first for assistance with that. But I also heard that MDMA might be available by the end of the year as well to be administered by a psychiatrist, a licensed psychiatrist.
I mean, while we're on the subject, I mean, with people who are listening who are like, that's interesting. I want to look into this a little more. Are there any sort of like warnings or heatings that you would sort of have people be like, okay, like, if you look into these kinds of drugs, these kinds of substances, here are some things you should be cognizant of, and like, what does that look like? Right,
100%. Some of these things are not legal. So that's on
that's
on you, like liability. Like, look into this again. Like we talked about the medical piece before. I am not a medical professional, nor am I a legal advisor. So you do your own research if that's something that's right for you. The way that these drugs are administered by these folks is that they do it under the guidance of saying that they're a church organization, because then they're not prosecuted by they're in a different category. Yeah. So that's how that works.
It's like a religious ceremony.
It's a religious ceremony, correct. So that's why they have like a shaman for the ayahuasca ceremonies or for psilocybin. So they're saying it's a religious ceremony, therefore we can administer this sacrament, similar to what's administered, like it's not the same thing, but communion. So it's under the same guise of that umbrella, and that's legally how they're able to do that. So look into that first and decide what's best for you. But also, these are uncontrolled substances, just like any other drug. And I believe some of them are classified as Schedule A drugs, right? So, they're not monitored by the FDA. So you need to make sure that you're doing your own due diligence and talking to your medical professional before you pursue any type of plant medicine.
Sure. All right. Well, we got the warning out of
the
way.
Legal
out there. Just disavow any negative effects there. But I wanted to also talk about, like, in general, we've talked about some of the, the positive fitness trends, some of the, positive like wellness trends that are going on in the community. But just like to flip that around for a second. I mean, in your experience, especially in San Diego, does it seem to you as though there's any sort of negative side to this, any like negative part of the movement that you want to address, any like sort of trends that you're seeing are going in the wrong direction with wellness and fitness and that sort of thing that you would discourage? Anything along those lines?
Yeah, I think we were talking about it earlier, is kind of those bogus resources. Yeah. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and you need to really check in with yourself if it feels right for you. You can kind of get duped by anybody these days. There's the phrase, the snake oil salesman, right?
Sure.
And that exists within the wellness community too. Same thing, we were talking about FDA regulated things. Supplements are not regulated by the FDA. Mm-hmm. So you might be taking your vitamins, but there's no cross-checked balances if those are working for you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it really comes down to what's best for you and tuning into yourself. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Now, out of all the different changes that someone can make when they're first getting started along their fitness wellness journey, however you want to put it, like what do you feel like if you had to pick one thing, like what is like the single most important lifestyle change that you think can immediately benefit your health and wellness, like starting today?
Just start breathing.
Yeah.
Just stop, right? Like not if you're driving, but just like close your
Or swimming.
eyes or swimming or whatever. Just close your eyes and pause and tune into you right now and take a deep breath. By far, everybody I talk to on the podcast through the interviews, it's all about being still and mindful within yourself. Because you don't have to do meditation. You can just even breathe for just a minute, just paying attention to your breathing. It centers you into yourself and then guides you to make the choices that are right for you. So I believe that you are test subject number one, and only you know what's best for you and your body. Whether that activity is right for you, whether you feel like you need, maybe you just need to take a nap, maybe you need to nourish your body with healthy foods. You can only do that by checking in with yourself on a regular basis. And then from there, pursuing a meditation practice is key. Nearly every single person I talk to, it all comes back down to that meditation piece. And just start, and it's really tough. I'm still working on it myself to quiet the mind. It's really hard. But even just starting with that 2-minute breathing exercise, then go to 3. And yeah, thoughts are going to come in, and that's okay. You don't have to think, oh gosh, I can't think right now. I can't think right now. Oh, now I'm thinking. When you're meditating, that's part of the process.
Sure.
So it's just like exercising any muscle. You just got to exercise the stillness of your mind.
Is there anybody particular in that space? I mean, I follow a lot of podcasters, influencers who all talk about meditation. But in particular, is there anybody in that space who would really say like this person knows what they're talking about when it comes to meditation, when it comes to quieting the mind, when it comes to breathing exercises, that kind of thing? I mean, there's probably a number of people, but maybe just a couple that you can mention.
Yeah, there's a couple breathwork folks that have started. They have apps, I think. There's the Our Breathe Collective and Pause Breathwork. We talked about Breathe Degrees too. Those are studios. But any of the wellness studios, yoga studios here, usually have some kind of meditation session. And you could always reach out to them to see what works for you. Yeah, there's lots of different folks. Absolutely. And I think like even if one person, the thing with wellness and kind of mindfulness and spirituality is one person says it one way and maybe it doesn't resonate, but then you hear it again a few days later and then it clicks and everybody's kind of saying the same things, but you just have to find the person that resonates with you at that time.
Sure. One theme on your podcast, in addition to the things we talked about, seems to be this idea of sustainability. I want to talk a little bit about what sustainability means to you and what it does or doesn't include, and also like how you think our community in particular here in San Diego could be more sustainable.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a few questions.
Yeah. So sustainability is kind of like wellness in that it has a big umbrella, right? So it's all about reducing your environmental impact, your global environmental footprint, right? So that could be a bunch of different things. So in our community, that looks like beach cleanups. We have so many nonprofit organizations like Surfrider, San Diego, I Love a Clean San Diego is another great one that focus on cleaning up our waterways. We all know how important thankfully we've had tons of rain this year, but how clean water is important to the wellness of our health and of our own bodies. So you could look at waterways, you can look at food waste. There's a really cool organization we had on the podcast called Produce Good. And they're so cool. What they do is they work with all the local farms and even just people like in Rancho Santa Fe that have tons of orange groves. And then they get volunteers to come and collect all of the produce that they don't need. And then they give it back to the food banks. So they work on collecting all of that through their organization, and it's a win-win for everybody. So there's organizations dedicated on improving our food waste and also accessing food. So there's the People Produce Mobile Farmers Market that is bringing food to those like food desert neighborhoods where people don't have access to good food. And same thing, they're partnering with local farms with that excess produce to donate it to folks in need. So food's another area. We talked about zero waste movement and reducing waste, single plastic use. Another really cool, there's a lot of athleisure wear and sustainable clothing companies that are coming out of San Diego. So a lot of upcycling is really trendy in the clothing, in the fashion world right now. The fashion industry is the second largest polluter in the world for waste. Yes, it's huge because of fast fashion and things like that. To get those new designs out quickly, they just go through a bunch of material. And then if they have leftover stuff, it just gets...
It's almost by design.
Yes. Yeah, so it just kind of self-perpetuates itself. So there are a couple of cool upcycling companies here, fashion lines that are using older clothes and repurposing them into something else. There's a gal named Positive Fee, and she holds sustainable fashion events around town. It's where she curates clothes, and then you kind of pay a fee, and then you can... what you can fit in your bag is what you get to take home. So there's a lot of swap meets and things like that where people are exchanging clothes. And then we talked about, the zero waste movement and, going to refill stores. Jimbo's opened a Dr. Bronner's refill station in their store. There are several refill stores around town, and that can be really scary, but all you do is you take your glass pickle jar into the store, you weigh it on this machine, and then you fill up with whatever goods that you need that are there. So it reduces the waste, and then you get healthy, yummy things. And it's actually cheaper a lot of the time to do it that way, because then you're not paying for what most of product is packaging. Okay. The cost that they charge for items comes from the packaging costs, like it makes to make that aluminum can, right? So if you can reduce the packaging waste, and all you do is fill up this with fresh granola, you're going to save yourself some money. You're just buying the granola directly rather than the can that the granola comes in. So it saves the environment, it saves you money as well.
Sure. Do you feel like when it comes to sustainability, we covered a lot there. We talked about the zero waste movement. We talked about the effect on people in lower income stratosphere. But do you feel like San Diego as a whole right now? Because we just wrapped up a series on climate change and renewable energy policy, and that's not exactly what we're talking about today, but sort of related in the sense that as San Diego moves in a direction of trying to be a more sustainable community, they recently passed their climate action plan. They're trying to be more sustainable, trying to be more energy efficient. They're trying to reduce waste, all these sorts of good initiatives and good goals. But do you feel like San Diego as a whole, like when you look at downtown, when you look at our North County communities, when I look at our South County communities, do you feel like we're moving in a sustainable, towards a sustainable future, or do you feel like there's a lot that's wrong with the way that we're going?
I think all these actions help. I think if something you're really passionate about, going to the city council meetings and any petition and advocating for these changes is one step that you can take to make sure we're moving in the right direction. One thing that I see all the time, and I don't know how it gets addressed, this is my own personal thing, is just the amount of real estate redevelopment that happens. It's like, that was a perfectly good building. Why are we tearing it all down and rebuilding it to just change the look and feel of that one restaurant or whatever, because it needs to have a new concept? The amount of waste that goes into, rather than repurposing I know they keep the shell or something, but just ripping out the entire kitchens and redoing, it's like, why? Sure. We really couldn't keep that look and feel because it's 8 years old and it's too dated in the restaurant industry's mind. That's something that I personally see, that I don't have a background in restaurant design or real estate management, but that's something as a consumer I drive by and I'm be like, wow, that's just sad that we felt just like, did we really need to do that? Okay, so. Personally, that's just something I don't understand.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to just study on that, look into like how much of our waste as a community actually comes from redevelopment.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see that.
Yeah.
I wanted to close by talking a little bit about some practical applications that we can take away from today. So, I mean, we've talked a bit about, some practical steps that people can take towards their own health and wellness journey. But now, in the last couple minutes that we have, are there maybe some specific lifestyle choices that people can make that you're like, this, if I had to highlight this, I mean, I know we talked about a few of these things already, but you just really want to highlight a few things, things that people can make with their diet, with their nutrition, with their fitness, maybe some influencers to follow, or people to kind of monitor and be like, this one person has a really good following and has a really good rapport. What are some things that you would recommend? What are some trends that you would highlight in closing?
I think just turning to your neighborhood resources, how can you support your neighborhood local wellness resources even more? There are so many yoga studios within your neighborhood that you could start with. So starting there, a lot of the yoga studios also have boutiques within them, and they're going to have local products. So if you stop by your local studio, you're going to find gifts that were crafted and San Diego made here. So that's another way that you can help out our community. And then from there, getting to know the resources that fit within that wellness lifestyle that you're seeking. So like we talked about in the beginning, is where do you feel like you're out of balance? And then from there, exploring those resources further. Like I mentioned, we have the San Diego Wellness Business Directory as a place to start. You can also follow our events at Locally Well on Instagram. But other local resources, there are a lot of sustainable resources out there that we mentioned. I think that's a great place to start.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to also give you a chance as we close just to quickly promote the podcast a bit. I mean, I know you just did the one series in March on women's health and wellness.
Yeah.
And then now you're doing a series about the zero waste living.
Yep.
What are some upcoming maybe episodes or things that you're doing that you're really excited about?
Yeah, so May is Mental Health Month.
Okay.
So we're going to be talking a lot about mental health. Obviously, as we talked about, COVID did a number on a lot of us. Even if you didn't maybe have a mental health issue before, maybe you might have. I think we all had one after being cooped up and trapped in our houses with the unknown for a while. And if you're wanting to process any of that, we're going to go through some of those topics. We also haven't really dived deep into spirituality, which is something I'd like to do more of. So, and spirituality is huge, but it could be anything, I think we might be talking to some psychics who might be doing some tarot readings. And so that's of interest. It's always kind of fun. So that might be something we're going to do. I'm also going to be doing men's wellness in June, because focusing on bringing more of the guys into the picture, because guys need it too. Everybody needs, and it's not about self-care. It's about that balance, right? You don't have to go to the spa and do facial. That's not, that's when people think about that's what wellness is. Wellness is about having balance in every area of your life. So maybe that is spirituality. Maybe you feel like you need to have more of a spiritual practice, whether that's meditation or prayer or belonging to a spiritual community. What does your movement look like? What is your movement practice? Maybe it's just going out for a walk every day.
Sure.
What are you eating? Is that really nourishing your well-being? So looking at all of those things. So every person, everybody who has a body, and that's everybody. Everybody should, think about how they can have more balance across all areas of their life. And maybe that's even relationships too. What are the connections like in your life? Do you feel fulfilled with the relationships you have? Not necessarily romantic relationships, but friendships, work relationships. How can we be balanced as a whole person?
Evaluate everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks so much for coming to the show. Again, this has been Marta Giri. She's the founder and host of the Locally Well podcast. And you can check her out. What's the website again? It's
locallywell.com.
Locallywell.com. And she's also on Instagram as well. Is that correct?
Yep.
And thanks so much for coming to the show. It's a fantastic episode. And we look forward to having you on again.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right, guys. That's a wrap. This has been another recorded episode of Stay Classy San Diego with your host, Steve Wire. Thanks again to our sponsors, MaxLux Media at maxluxmedia.com and Dorado Nutrition at doradonutrition.com. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning into the show. See you next time. Stay classy, San Diego.